Okay, so Hare Krishna, everybody. So welcome. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 8, entitled Questions by King Parikshit. And we're reading text 26. And the translation is on the board. So please repeat after me. Na me asava parayanti Brahman anashanadami Pibato chuta piyusham Tadvakyad vinishritam Na me asava parayanti Brahman anashanadami Pibato chuta piyusham Tadvakyadabdi vinishritam. So we will say the word for word. Na, never. Me, mine. Asavaha, life. Parayanti, becomes exhausted. Brahman, O learned Brahmana. Anashanadami, because of fasting. Pibataha, because of my drinking. Acuta, of the infallible. Piyusham, nectar. Tat, yo. Vakyadvi, ocean of speech. Vinishritam, flowing down from. Translation. O learned Brahmana, because of my drinking the nectar of the message of the infallible personality of Godhead, which is flowing down from the ocean of your speeches, I do not feel any sort of exhaustion due to my fasting. So this is Parikshit Maharaj talking to Shukadev Goswami. So please repeat. O learned Brahmana, because of my drinking the nectar of the message of the infallible personality of Godhead, which is flowing down from the ocean of your speeches, I do not feel any sort of exhaustion due to my fasting. The disciplic succession from Brahma, Narada, Vyasa and Shukadev Goswami is particularly different from others. The disciplic successions from other sages are simply a waste of time, being devoid of Achyuta Katha, or the message of the infallible Lord. The mental speculators can present their theories very nicely by reason and arguments, but such reasons and arguments are not infallible, for they are defeated by better mental speculators. Maharaj Parikshit was not interested in the dry speculation of the flickering mind, but he was interested in the topics of the Lord because factually he felt that by hearing such a nectarian message from the mouth of Shukadev Goswami, he was not feeling any exhaustion even though he was fasting because of his imminent death. One can indulge in hearing the mental speculators, but such hearing cannot endure for a length of time. One will be exhausted very soon from hearing such hackneyed ways of thinking, and no one in the world can be satisfied simply by hearing such useless speculations. The message of the Lord, especially from a personality like Shukadev Goswami, can never be tiring, even though one may be exhausted from other causes. In some editions of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the text of the last line of this verse reads Anyatra Kupitad Dvijat, which means that the king might be overwhelmed by the thought of his imminent death by snake bite. The snake is also twice born, and its anger is compared to the cursing Brahmana boy who was without good intelligence. Maharaj Parikshit was not at all afraid of death, for he was fully encouraged by the message of the Lord. One who is fully absorbed in Achyuta Katha can never be afraid of anything in this world. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Namo Vishnu Pada Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhai Krishna Goswami Namine. Namo Vishnu Pada Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauranga Swami Namine. Shri So in this verse, Srila Prabhupada talks about the importance of disciplic succession and hearing from the right source. So yesterday, Padmalochan Prabhu, he spoke mostly on the disciplic succession and the importance of hearing from a bona fide source. So here, this book, these books, there's many volumes of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this was written by Srila Prabhupada, who is our founder, Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And he also wrote the Bhagavad Gita as it is. So there's a special significance of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, because there are many versions of Bhagavad Gita. When Srila Prabhupada, at an advanced age, he went to America to share this knowledge, this Bhagavatam knowledge with the world. There were many translations of Bhagavad Gita, but we didn't see any people joining. There were no devotees. But when Srila Prabhupada went to the West, people from all backgrounds, whether they were Chinese, Asian, African, Western, they were all joining. Why is that? Because of the purity. Because Prabhupada didn't change anything that was coming down from the words of Krishna and then his spiritual master, and then that spiritual master get that knowledge to his disciple, and so the knowledge is descending, and Srila Prabhupada has brought this knowledge, and because this knowledge is untainted by mental speculation and the motives that some of the people who wrote Bhagavad Gita, they had their own motives to translate, so the purity wasn't there, and it didn't touch the heart of the people, because as we know, Krishna is within the heart of everyone as the super soul, and when we hear the transcendental vibration, the pure sound vibration, then it touches our heart, and then we can revive our eternal relationship with Krishna as a loving servant of Krishna. So, this in the purport, Prabhupada mentions in the previous purport that Padmalochan Prabhu spoke on day before yesterday, the secret of receiving transcendental knowledge is through disciplic succession, descending knowledge. So that is authorized knowledge coming directly from the independent Lord. So authorized knowledge is knowledge that is coming from the right source. Just for example, if someone wants to become a doctor, he may think, oh, I'll read all the books from the library and I'll become a doctor. But if he goes and if that person comes to you and says, oh, I can operate on you, brain surgery, would you agree? No, you wouldn't agree. So why would we take this transcendental knowledge about the Lord so cheaply and accept it from anyone and everyone? We need to read the books that Srila Prabhupada has given, then we can recognize who we can approach. So there's the mantra is received from the authorized source. So coming from an Indian background, there's the Kaithri Mantra, which is a very secret and confidential mantra. So this Kaithri Mantra sometimes is sung in public places, Om Bhur Bhurva Swa. So that mantra, it doesn't carry the potency, because the person who may be giving it is not following the process. So by reading these books, one needs to also imbibe the teachings and follow the teachings and understand that I am receiving this knowledge from the pure source, and out of humility share this knowledge with others, knowing that this knowledge has been benedicted to me. It's a special blessing, and I need to also give it in a pure form and try to follow this knowledge in the pure form. So in Bhagavad Gita, as it is, Srila Prabhupada mentions in verse 434 in Transcendental Knowledge, which says, Tad vini pranipatena pariprashnena sevayam upadekshanti te dhanam dhanina tattvadarshinaha. So unless there is, so the translation reads, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. So in the purport of that verse, Srila Prabhupada writes, the path of spiritual realization is undoubtedly difficult. The Lord therefore advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master. Bona fide means authorized in the disciplic chain, in the line of the disciplic chain from the Lord himself. Such a spiritual master should be accepted in full surrender, and one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant without false prestige. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. So unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. So in this also there's something, the key element in this is that we do menial service, just like we come to the temple and we do menial service. Every morning there's devotees who are sweeping the temple room, taking the brush and pan, cleaning the temple room, getting ready for greeting the lords, and sweeping outside the temple, washing the pots, making garlands. There's so many services to do. So there is a great potency in doing menial service. There's the pastime of one great devotee. He was so knowledgeable, and he was a Sanskrit scholar, but he menially served his spiritual master, who was not academically qualified, but he had the transcendental knowledge. So this devotee, he had so much knowledge. He was a Sanskrit scholar, but he wasn't proud, and he wasn't thinking, oh, I'm such a great person, how can I do this menial service? So we learn from these great teachers, and we follow their example. We don't imitate them, but we follow their example and their mood, that how can I make progress in the spiritual life. So the intention and the purpose must be there, that why am I doing this? Is to please the acharyas, to please the devotees. Because when the devotees are pleased, then Krishna is pleased. In Krishna book, Prabhupada mentions in the pastime of Govardhan, that Govardhan hill was supplying all the grass and waterfalls, flowers, so many things to the cowherd boys and the cows of Krishna, because he knew that by pleasing Krishna's dear devotees, then the blessings, they come, and then the door opens up to this amazing world of Krishna consciousness, the purity. So Prabhupada also mentions in the purport that disciplic succession from other sages are simply a waste of time, being devoid of Achyuta Katha, or the message of the infallible Lord, because one will never be satisfied by hearing useless speculations. So also Padmalochan Prabhu, he mentioned on this, that he was doing many, he was going to Buddhist retreats and doing many austerities, but there was no substance in that. When we do things that are not really connected directly to Krishna, it's as Devamrita Swami mentioned when he was visiting, it is insubstantial and insatiable. That means it will never be satisfied. After a time it becomes boring. Just like Prabhupada gave the example of Someone may chant Coca-Cola, 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 but you get really bored and tired by keep repeating that name. But when we chant the powerful holy names of the Lord, which is Krishna himself, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. This mantra, one will never get tired of chanting this mantra for lifetimes, because this mantra is coming directly from the spiritual world. So this mantra is infallible and it's pure. So one who is fully absorbed in Achyuta Katha, topics of the Lord, can never be afraid of anything in this world. Prabhupada ends his purport like that. So it mentions how Parikshit Maharaj, he had 7 days to live before he was going to be bitten by the snake bird. So he was not afraid, and he was even fasting, and Parikshit Maharaj mentions in the purport that I'm not getting exhausted even from fasting. So we might inquire that in the first place he was actually cursed because he was thirsty, but now 7 days are going by and he's not tired or thirsty or exhausted. The reason is that it's the pastime of the Lord. He wants to bring his pure devotee, Parikshit Maharaj, back home, back to the spiritual world. So some of these things that happen in the Bhagavatam, the pure devotees are covered over, is because there's a certain purpose behind it. If Parikshit Maharaj was not cursed, then we would not have the Srimad Bhagavatam, because we wouldn't get the opportunity to hear from Shukadeva Goswami and hear the amazing, powerful, beautiful questions that Parikshit Maharaj would ask him. So also Prabhupada's name is Abhay Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So Abhay Charanaravinda, it means one who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. He has no fear, Abhayam. So one can develop this no fear by following the process and approaching the devotees and the spiritual master. So Srila Prabhupada, at a very elderly age, almost 80, he went to the Western world. He went to America on a cargo ship, and he had 2 heart attacks on that ship. And when he went to America, he was living, he arrived there, and then he didn't know where he was going to go, how he was going to spread this message of Achyuta Katha, the message of the Lord. And he was given instruction from his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that this knowledge shared with the world outside, shared with the Western countries, because this knowledge is not just meant for the people of India. This knowledge is for everyone, because everyone is part and parcel, eternal servant of the Lord. So when he went to the Western country, people were not really following these principles of there was meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, gambling, all this. But because Prabhupada had that firm conviction in his heart and he was following the process, then he had no fear, and by his purity so many devotees joined. And then his disciples in America, and we have one of his disciples who Mukunda Maharaj, who actually was one of the 3 husband and wife team who had gone to London to spread this Krishna consciousness, and then it went like wildfire and it spread in all the European countries, and then it went to Africa, Asia. So the reason is because they carried that torch, the purity of the teachings of Srila Prabhupada, and they didn't distort it and change it. They gave that knowledge as it is, as Prabhupada has given it. And that's why the purity is there and people's heart are being transformed. So to the degree that one is developing this Krishna consciousness and this purity, to that degree people will be more accepting. Of course, every individual also has their own connection with Krishna, and if one is sincere, even if they don't come in contact with someone who is purely following, they will be guided to the spiritual teacher, as Prabhupada mentions in 434, Tadvini Pranipatina, that Krishna also within the heart, he will reveal the spiritual master to one and we can approach the Lord. So Prabhupada also mentions here that these other sages that they gave the knowledge, it's based on mental speculation. So there's 4 defects of the human beings. In the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada mentions in the introduction is that the mundaner has these imperfections, the human beings, is that we're sure to make mistakes, we become illusioned, and we have a tendency to cheat others, and we have imperfect senses. Just like if you want to see a virus, you can't see it with our naked eyes, we need to see it under a powerful microscope. So our body is not infallible, we have a limit. But Prabhupada mentions in Sri Ishopanishad, there's 3 ways of gaining knowledge, there's 3 evidences. Anyone can name any? Anuman. Yes, Anuman is logic by hypothesis. So Prabhupada mentions like if someone is walking up to the temple and they hear the sound of music, then they assume there's people in the temple room. So that's a suggestive knowledge, hypothesis. So through logic, it comes hypothesis. And another way of getting knowledge is pratyaksha, which means direct perception. So we see, we can see the sun, that's direct perception. And then the third one is Shabda. Yes, Shabda Praman, which is evidence from the Vedic literature, the transcendental sound vibration, which is perfect and pure. The Shabda Pramanam, sound vibration, evidence from sound vibration. So this is, Prabhupada mentions also in a lecture on Bhagavad Gita 2, 8-12 in Los Angeles, November 27, 1968. So there's 3 ways of obtaining this knowledge. But the highest and the purest and the infallible way of receiving knowledge is through Shabda Praman. So this Bhagavatam is coming from descending knowledge, just like Uddhava, he was receiving knowledge from Krishna. Krishna wanted him to, in Bhagavatam 3.4.32 purport, Krishna wanted him to share this knowledge after he leaves, to share the further knowledge. So this knowledge is coming directly from Krishna. And in Srimad Bhagavatam 11.2.34 purport, the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they mentioned the 9 Yogendras, which are great sages. They presented this knowledge, which is not their personal concoction, but is authorized knowledge originally spoken by the Lord Himself. So in Bhagavatam 11.2.39, it says that knowledge that conforms with authorized statements, there's the 3-fold check. The followers of Krishna consciousness are not mindless or fanatical. They intelligently follow the system of checks and balances called Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. That is, one must accept a bona fide spiritual master who must in turn be confirmed by the opinion of great saintly persons and revealed scriptures. If one accepts a bona fide spiritual master, follows the example of great saintly persons, and becomes conversant with authorized literature, such as Bhagavad Gita as it is and Bhagavatam, one's program of chanting the holy names of the Lord and hearing about the Lord's pastimes will be completely successful. So this purport is very powerful because there's mentioned here system. So when Devamrita Swami, who is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, he was visiting us, coming from New Zealand, he was saying that how we need to create systems. Just like in the morning we get up and we brush our teeth and we take bath. So that is a system because we want to be clean. So similarly in spiritual life, we want to develop good habits or systems. So we rise early, we pay our obeisances, we bow down to the Lord and His dear devotees, and we chant this Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. So in all the revealed scriptures in Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, it's mentioned that the Yuga Dharma of this age is chanting this Maha Mantra. So there's 4 ages: the golden age, which was called Satya Yuga, and in Satya Yuga the process was, the people in those days, they became elevated and purified by performing yogic meditation. And then the next age, which is the silver age, that's Treta Yuga, the process was yagya, so fire sacrifices, like in Lord Ram's days. Then the sages and the kings, they would do great fire sacrifices, and then they would get the great sages, and Krishna himself, sometimes he would appear. And then the Bronze Age, which was Dwapara Yuga, the process was deity worship, just like we also have the deity worship here. So we also follow that process of worshipping the Lord in the authorized way. And then in Kali Yuga, which is this Iron Age, the process is Harinam. So Harinam Sankirtan. So Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam, kalau nasti eva nasti katir anyatha. So in this age, Kali Yuga, the only process of obtaining the lotus feet of Lord Krishna is chanting the holy names, chanting the holy names, chanting the holy names of the Lord. So if something is repeated many times, so it's repeated here 3 times, that means there is great significance, there's emphasis that in this age, the means by which we can get out of the cycle of birth and death is by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So in Bhagavad Gita, as it is, Prabhupada mentions how there are 8,400,000 species of life, and within that there's different categories. There's insects, plant life, reptiles, and human form of life. So in the human form of life, there's 400,000 different categories. So that is also includes demigods that have higher consciousness, and it also includes lower living entities who have a very low consciousness. So this human form of life is an opportunity, is a loophole, that the difference between a human and an animal, maybe one of a human and an animal, because let's first talk about what's the same. So humans eat and animals also eat. So humans sleep and animals also sleep. So humans have children, animals also have children. So so what is the difference between an animal and a human? It's the power to think, that's right, to inquire. The animal is just acting instinctively. Okay, I need to protect my family that's defending. I need to feed my family, the babies and things like that. So they are acting instinctively. Of course, they also have some feeling because Krishna is within their heart as well. So the difference in the human form of life is that we have this inquiry. We can inquire into the higher questions in life, that who am I? Who is God? And what is my relationship with God? So how can I get out of this cycle of birth and death coming, I'm sure the children, and also we've watched movies of reincarnation where someone dies and maybe took the body of a dog or a horse or a tree, something like that. So do we really want to keep going up and down on the Ferris wheel, going up and down, round and round, taking different forms of life, 8,400,000 species of life. And then when we come in the evolutionary, if we fall down in the evolutionary cycle, that means you have to gradually keep going up in this, how long do we have to wait until we get this opportunity of the human form of life? So we all have this opportunity to take advantage of this knowledge so we can get out of this material world, because people think, okay, heaven is the ultimate, but heavenly planet is the demigods live. Yes, the quality of life is very great, just like the king and queen, or of maybe there's some countries who still have the king and queen, like in England. They're living very rich lifestyle, they're living in a humongous palace, so many servants, but they also die, they also get old, they get disease, and they also suffer from their own mind, the atmika, bautika, and then suffer from material nature, adi bautika, it's too hot, or other living entities, other bautika, the mosquitoes are biting, or husband is annoyed with the wife, or the wife is annoyed with the husband and the children, and then adi devika. So the elements, like the demigods, are controlling the wind, the sun, it's too hot, it's too cold, like that. So the heavenly planet, they live a longer lifespan, just like we see also in the animal. A dog's lifespan, they can live a long time, but even for a child, you have a pet, that dog will, their lifetime maybe in 20 years, how long? 15 or 16? Okay. Yeah, so that is considered old for them, and they'll die. So the demigod is similarly, they may live for hundreds of thousands or millions of years, but they still die. So our ultimate goal is not to go to the heavenly planet. We do good activities and we get our karma, you do good things, you get good results. But that's also going up and down. You finish up your good credits, like a bank account, you use up all your good credits, then you back down to zero balance and you have to start again. So our goal is to go to the spiritual world with Krishna. We have an eternal relationship with Krishna. We have 5 main rasas, or relationship with Krishna, depending on your own your heart and what you desire. Your relationship with Krishna is friendship, just like we have the photo here. Krishna is going out with his cowherd boyfriends in the forest and going herding the cows and playing in the lakes and forests. And we hear in Krishna book all the wonderful pastimes, like Aghasura came, and when his body, when he was killed, and then they were using it as a slide and playing in the forest. And then we have relationship of like Mother Yashoda and Krishna as a parent can have that kind of relationship with Krishna. Not that we become Mother Yashoda or Nanda Baba, but we follow in their footsteps, and then we have a similar relationship. It's not that we replace anyone in the spiritual world, because every individual is eternal and always existing. And then there's the relationship of servant, just like Hanuman. He's a great devotee of Lord Ram. He has a relationship as a servant. And then yes, Dasya, servant. Yes, and lover, yes, Radharani. So the gopis, loving relationship with Krishna. So there's different relationships we can develop with Krishna. So when we go to the spiritual world, it's not like some airy-fairy thing or some puff of smoke. It's actually substantial. It's just like when you go to a river or a lake, there's a tree at the edge of the lake, and you see a reflection on the tree. So the roots are peering up and the branches are peering down. So it's opposite. So whatever is happening in the spiritual world, whatever is there in the spiritual world, is a perverted, distorted reflection in the material world. Just like in the spiritual world, the highest relationship is Parakiya Bhava. So relationship with Krishna, he has with all the gopis, even though they are married, they are having a relationship with Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in the material world, if a married woman or man goes and has a relationship with other people, that is the most abominable and immoral activity. So we can't imitate what is there. So we have this material body. And I was just listening to Chaitanya Charitamrita, which says that we cannot artificially groom this material body and think that we are a gopi and go to the spiritual world. So this material body is given to us, and especially this human form of life. So not that we imitate, but we follow in the footsteps of these teachers, and then we can go back home, back to Godhead. So in Srimad Bhagavatam 11.238 purport, the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they say, in transcendental Krishna consciousness, there is no contradiction, pettiness, or lack of ecstasy. In other words, it is not like a material object or like material teachings, which always proves temporary and constantly miserable. So Devamrita Swami, on the 31st of December, he gave the class, and he summarized Maya. He said Maya, or the illusory energy of the Lord, is insatiable. That means you can never be satisfied, you'll never be happy, and insubstantial, you can't hold on to it. Just like we love someone, but we can't hold on to that person because that person's going to die, we're going to die. And you might like a rasagula or some sweet you like, ice cream or gulab jamun. How many can we eat? You know, we're going to be like, oh my God, I don't want to see this rasagula or ice cream ever again. You can't eat it. But in spiritual life, there's chanting of Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. We will never be satisfied. We want to keep chanting and chanting because it's relishable, it's touching our soul, and it's the substance in this mantra. And we will never stop eating Krishna prasadam, food that is offered to Krishna. So the authorized food like vegetables, milk products, herbs and fruits that we can offer to the Lord, pure foods. And then Krishna eats it through his eyes. Can you believe Krishna is so amazing? He can even eat through his eyes. Any part of his body can be used for any other function. And then he eats that food and it becomes blessed food or prasadam. And we eat that and we become purified. So if you see the difference, you eat some other vegetarian foodstuffs and you taste the same food which is offered to Krishna. It's very different. You will experience it in your life. The tasting is in the what's the saying? The proof is in the pudding. Yes. So how can you get proof? Yourself, you taste it. So if someone says, someone's hungry, so the hunger naturally goes away by eating. You don't have to prove that you're not hungry. You're experiencing it yourself. So this process is very easy. Just try it and see, and our life has become so transformed, and we keep following this process, and by Krishna's mercy we keep on this progressive path, and then we can ultimately go back home, back to Krishna, and our eternal relationship with Krishna becomes revived. And we chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I'll stop there if anyone has any questions or comments. So welcome. Where are you coming from? Okay. You spend the day here?
Yeah, yesterday we stayed here,
Okay.
and then we just leave today.
Okay.
So it's nice and beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anybody has any questions or comments? Do you want to share any realizations, anything that's stuck in your mind? Would you like to share? You can share, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, would you be able to pass the microphone to? Okay. Krishna Kirtan Prabhu, you have anything? So today is also, pardon? So Ambika Mataji, who is disciple of Srila Prabhupada, she mentions how the appearance and disappearance of days of the great saints in our disciplic chain, they are like the mother of bhakti. So when we hear about them, we meditate on them, we pray to them, we get so much special benediction. Just like if someone's birthday, then we get lots of they get lots of presents, and they also give presents. So on these days we get a lot of special mercy. So today is the appearance day of this saint called Jagadish Pandit. So he, I'm just reading from the Vaishnava calendar. It mentions how Jagadish Pandit lived near Jagannath Mishra, the father of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. In Kali Yuga, he came himself as a devotee to teach by his own example of how to approach Krishna. And then, so he lived near the father of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he was a neighbor of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he assisted Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in spreading the Sankirtan movement, which is the congregational chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Krishna's name, in Jagannath Puri. So we see also many devotees, we go out and we chant, we go out on the streets and we chant Hare Krishna. You might have seen devotees going out on the street, or if you YouTube you can see. So regarding Jagadish Pandit, the Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Jagadish Pandit, the 15th branch of Lord Nityananda's followers, was the deliverer of the entire world. Devotional love of Krishna showered from him like torrents of rain. He lived near Mahaprabhu's house in Navadvip and would cook special items for him when he was not feeling well. So there was a pastime, yesterday we just had Ekadasi. So on Ekadasi we don't eat any grains. So that is the injunction, that devotees don't eat any grains on Ekadasi because the sin personified is in those grains. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was just a little boy, then Jagadish Pandit and Hiranya, they were Brahmanas, and they lived before that time, but they living a bit a distance away, they were living far away. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he is the Supreme Personality of God himself, he said, I want that Mahaprasadam that they have offered to Lord Vishnu. So we know Lord Vishnu doesn't fast because he is Krishna himself. It's the injunction that the devotees fast from grains. So even though it was Ekadasi, he wanted to eat that. So it's just a pastime. So we can see that in that pastime he was reciprocating with his devotees, Jagadish Pandit and Hiranya, that he wanted to eat the food that they lovingly cooked for the Lord because he was relishing that love. So when the devotees cook for the Lord, it's not so much the external foodstuffs that Krishna is accepting. He's accepting the heart and the loving mood in which the food is cooked for the pleasure of the Lord and his devotees. So even when we dress the Lord, Krishna's accepting that loving exchange, that internal love that is being offered. So whenever we do something, then we need to also question our motive and why we are doing what we are doing. So Prabhupada mentions previously that the devotees of the Lord are not fanatical or sentimentalists. We're not doing this out of sentiment. Oh, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Oh, Prabhupada. No, you want to know Prabhupada, you want to know Krishna, then read the books and follow the books. Sometimes we see sometimes people come and they say, oh, it's all. Then yes, that is there. Yes, there's some substance in it, there's benefit in it. But how to get the real benefit and the substance is by actually reading the books, recognizing who to follow, what to do, imbibing that lifestyle, and then sharing this knowledge with others. And that's when the purity of the force comes and Krishna empowers that person to share this knowledge and become more and more progressive and more purified in spiritual life. So there's no questions or comments. Yes, Anashinga Kavach Prabhu.
There's an interesting point.
Oh, would you be?
In the purple version, he says that snakes are also twice born.
Yes, Nashinga Kavach Prabhu mentioned how the snakes in the purple. Prabhupada mentions the snake are twice born.
Does that mean you're not wrong with it?
I've read also that it's the reason why they are called twice born is because the mother lays the egg, so they're born once, and then when they hatch out of the egg, they're born again, so they're twice born. But that doesn't mean, as Nashinga Kavach Prabhu mentioned, that they're brahmanas. So a brahmana is not by birth, but by qualification. Just like the followers of Srila Prabhupada, some of them came from very degraded backgrounds, illicit sex, gambling, intoxication. But they became brahmanas and even higher than brahmanas because they were following. Whereas someone, when I was in New Zealand, then because I grew up in Zimbabwe, and there was another family who moved there, and they were brahmanas by birth, and then you opened their fridge and there was eggs in the fridge. So brahmana, a devotee, is known by their qualities and actions and consciousness. So in the teachings of Krishna and Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita asked Krishna, how does a devotee, how does he eat, how does he sleep? There's certain things that a devotee does. It's because of the consciousness, the way they do it. It's because everything a devotee does is for the pleasure of Krishna and his devotees. So one is not qualified just by being born in a Brahmana family or a devotee family. We need to take up this knowledge, take up this, especially also coming from the Indian background. We are naturally, this knowledge, we are born into this knowledge, but we need to take advantage of these teachings. And it's for everyone, because every single living entity is part and parcel of Krishna. And this human form of life is benedicted to us, is an opportunity to get out of this cycle of birth and death. Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.